Hi there, everybody. Peter Greenberg here with our global travel update for the last Thursday of April, 2024. Time is flying by. Speaking of flying, we're coming to you from the Lion Museum, the Lion Museum of Aviation right here in Santa Ana, California. For those of you who are av geeks like me, that's a B-17 behind me. If you've been watching Masters of the Air, that's the plane or the same type of plane. In the meantime, we have lots of things to talk about today. Lots of news that happened just yesterday, as a matter of fact, and we're going to get to that in a second. By the way, where are we right now? We're in Santa Ana, California. Excuse my cough. Adjacent to runway 20 right here at John Wayne Airport. What a great museum this is. They even have a B-25 here. For those people who are airplane historians, you know what I'm talking about. That's the raid over Tokyo. Billy Mitchell taking off from the USS Hornet on a B-25 from an aircraft carrier, an almost impossible feat. And they knew when they took off, they couldn't make it back. They would run out of fuel. They were on a one-way mission. The B-25 that's here was not on that mission, which is why it's here. And it's an amazing plane to look at. And all of these planes are perfectly maintained, and many of them are still operational. So if you get a chance, come out and visit. Now, let's talk about some stuff that's important, really important. The U.S. Department of Transportation made an announcement, Secretary of Transportation Buttigieg, about new rules about airline refunds and about transparency in pricing, and of course, junk airline fees. So let's back up and take a look at this new rule. Is it really a new rule? Actually, it's an enhanced rule that's already been in place for years. The Department of Transportation, we talked about this before on Global Travel Update. Here's the rule. If an airline cancels your flight for whatever reason, you're entitled to an immediate refund back to your original form of purchase. Now, we've known about that for years. Well, then what happened during COVID? Well, a lot of the airlines were not exactly being responsible. They didn't exactly volunteer that information to passengers, and they steered them instead to getting vouchers or future flight credits, essentially an interest-free loan to the airlines. Well, all that stops. It should have stopped then, but now it's become a requirement that it has to be an automatic refund based on the situation, right? That's number one. But number two, they've now added to that, and they've included delays. So that if your flight is delayed more than 3 hours on a domestic flight, you get the full refund. If your flight is delayed more than 6 hours on an international flight, you get a full refund. Now, you may remember back in December of 22, when Southwest Airlines had their major meltdown, that the US DOT promised at that time they were going to formulate and then enact an airline passenger bill of rights. We're still waiting, but at least the announcement yesterday is a step in the right direction, but it didn't stop there because it also ended up talking about other charges that need refunds. For example, you check a bag for $40, and then the bag doesn't arrive when you do. The airline either misplaces it, delays it, or loses it entirely. At the very least, not counting what their liability is for that, you should get a refund of the checked baggage fee because they didn't honor the contract. They didn't complete it. So that's now on the books. And then for those of us who are addicted to Wi-Fi, if you get on the plane and you pay for Wi-Fi and the Wi-Fi doesn't work, well, in the old days, you just ate the charge. Now you get a refund for that as well. That's the refund issue. And you may remember, we talked about this before, a lot of airlines didn't honor that original DOT rule on cancellations during COVID. And in fact, some of them outright refused to grant refunds. One in particular was Air Canada, which said, oh no, we're not governed by US law, we're only governed by Canadian law. Not true. The US DOT regulation states that it applies to every single airline that flies to, from, or within the United States, which means any foreign carrier that's flying to or from the United States has to abide by that rule. And the DOT fined Air Canada $25 million, and surprise, surprise, they started writing refund checks. Now, financial consequences will be just as stiff because it has to be done automatically. Now, when is this rule kicking into effect? Next week? No. Try October, but at least it's a step in the right direction. Now let's talk about junk fees. According to the DOT, an airline now has to display the full cost of your flight at the same moment that it displays the fare it wants to charge you. Otherwise, it's bait and switch, because when you go online to make a reservation, the first fare you see is sort of a teaser fare that doesn't include luggage, breathing, and anything else. So now they're going to have to do that, which is going to raise some interesting questions about how you price out basic economy, since that's usually the first fare that you see, and some people mistakenly think that's a great deal, when in fact, it's not. You know what I've said before? I will say it again. Friends don't let friends fly basic economy unless you happen to be in the witness protection program or a member of the or a fugitive from justice. I mean, all kidding aside, why would you, right? For $30 more, you get to at least pick a seat and you can get and it's refundable. Now, again, it's all refundable if the plane's delayed by 3 hours, and it's always been refundable if the airline cancels the flight, even if it's a non-refundable ticket. Now, if you cancel the flight, that's another story, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about stuff the airline does when it's under their control. So that's relatively good news. We're going to stay on top of that because hopefully the DOT is going to continue to work on that famous airline passenger bill of rights, because we desperately need it as we get into the summer months, and all hell's already breaking loose, going back to Boeing's delivery problems on the assembly line, and airlines unable to do what? Support the schedule that they've published. Already today, Southwest Airlines pulled out of 4 markets, right? They pulled out of Mexico. It's one city in Mexico. They pulled out of Houston Intercontinental. They pulled out of, I'm missing a few, but they pulled out of Syracuse, as a matter of fact. But they pulled out of airports not because they didn't want to fly there, they don't have the planes, right? Boeing has not delivered their planes. They've had to readjust their entire summer schedule. Same thing for United. So a lot of routes are getting consolidated, or a lot of flights are getting canceled, or worse, routes that were announced have been delayed, and routes that are about to be announced haven't been talked about because they literally do not have the equipment to support the schedule. What does that mean to you? Law of supply and demand. Airline fares have nowhere to go but up. It wasn't that long ago I was predicting that international airfares would be up about 10% over last year, and domestic fares would drop between 14 and 16%. That's now off the table because every plane, if you thought last year was full, get ready for this year. It's going to be over full if that's physically possible. So strap your seatbelts on because it's going to be an expensive or more expensive summer. Speaking of junk fees, the hotels are keeping at it with the resort fees. They're just trying to change the names. One New York City hotel has something they call a $30 a day curation fee. Can you repeat that after me? Curation. Let me curate garbage, right? But they're charging it a $30 curation fee. And by the way, that includes a glass of house wine. Are you out of control on that enthusiastically? Another hotel does a dynamic conversion on your dollar exchange and adds another 15% to your bill. The Fairmont Whistler in Canada, listen to this one, they charge you an extra fee to pay their other fee. Are you kidding me? I'm not. They are. So that's not good news. Again, vote with your wallets. If they don't disclose it when you check in, if they don't disclose it when you make your reservation before you check in, and you only find out about it with sticker shock when you check out, you can dispute the charge. You can also email me, right? Peter@petergreenberg.com. We're happy to fight that battle because it's failure to disclose, it's lack of transparency, and some might even argue it's fraud. Now, here's a weird one. I'm right here now in Orange County, and 2 legislators here in California, in Orange County, a pair of state senators have actually drafted a bill that would prevent Clear from operating at California airports. Now, why would they do that? You know what their argument is? That it's elitist. Wait a minute. Isn't first class more elitist than coach? Isn't TSA PreCheck more elitist than TSA regular? What is the problem here? It works. And if you can afford it and you're a frequent flyer, why wouldn't you do it? I live by Clear. I'm a frequent flyer, and many of you are as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works. But, I mean, can't they pick a better battle? And then there's the strangest battle of all, right? Senator Ted Cruz, I'm not getting political here. Trust me on this. Senator Ted Cruz has added a provision in the FAA reauthorization bill, which is now being debated by the Senate, that would require a government agency, either TSA or federal air marshals, to provide special escorts for congresspeople, members of their staff and families, judges, and do so not just at the airport, but give them private security screening so they don't have to stand in line. Gee, oh my God. God forbid they should have to stand in line. This reminds me of the story that Colin Powell once told me. The day after he lost his job as Secretary of State, he actually went out to Reagan Airport to fly up to New York. And guess what? He had to go through security. He had no clue about what was awaiting him, especially when he was taken out of line for secondary screening. And he sat there and he said to them, "Do you have any idea who I am?" And they said, "We don't care who you are. You've been taken out for secondary screening. That was the first time he came up close and personal with what the rest of us have been going through since 9/11. Well, what's Ted Cruz's problem? By the way, speaking of spending money, do you know how much it's going to cost the TSA to provide that service if it comes from the TSA? The General Accounting Office went out and did an estimate, about $55 million a year. For what? And if it's done by the U.S. Marshal Service, up to $500 million a year. Guys, your voters, this has nothing to do with Democrat or Republican. It has to do with basic common sense and understanding who works for who. As in, we voted for these guys, or somebody did. They're our elected representatives. What's going on here, guys? Figure it out. Okay, now let's go and say hello to some people here and answer some questions. All right. Okay, Harriet and Jim are always chiming in saying hello from Richmond, Virginia. We're going to go to visit Cambridge in the UK to visit a niece. Any recommendations? We will be there next week. Remember, I always talk to you about that draconian United Kingdom user tax for anybody flying from a UK airport, no matter where you're going. If you want to be smart, buy an open jaw ticket, fly from the US to London, take the Channel, the train, the Eurostar to Paris, have a nice night in a hotel there, fly back, and the money that you save on the taxes that you didn't have to pay to leave England goes to pay for that night in Paris. Okay, Robin's saying good evening from Williamsburg, Virginia, and Jeanette saying hi from Garden Grove. We know Garden Grove. Gene saying hi from Tulsa. Paul's up in Ashland, Washington, actually Ashland, Virginia. Recently read that it's difficult for 70-plus adults to get travel insurance. Any truth to that? No, it's not more difficult. It's more expensive. There are age exclusions or age cutoffs that kick you into a higher premium category. It's not impossible to get it, but yes, you have to spend more money. Hello from rainy Bellingham, Washington. Hello, Sue. Okay, Ann saying hello from Clark, New Jersey. Patty Ford saying, oh, hair flights are cut. And Sue says they pulled out of Bellingham. Okay, hello, Michael from Ohio. Okay, cheers from Tucson from Camilla. Melanie's saying hi from London rather than from Miami this week. Very cold here, considering it's almost May. Can somebody tell me whoever goes to London for the warm weather or the sun? Come on, enjoy London anyway. All right, Evelyn's saying hello, Peter. Colleen's saying, hey, Peter. Hello, Colleen. And by the way, one of the things that's going to happen, get ready for it. You're going to see some major fare changes in the next 24 to 48 hours. Why? Well, JetBlue stock dumped 19% yesterday. Southwest just reported a dismal first quarter. For those of you who follow Southwest Airlines, they were known as the one airline that never had an unprofitable quarter. Well, they just had one. American Airlines just had a dismal quarter. And these airlines are flying with all their planes full. Somebody explain that. And somebody explain that with all the airfares being what they are as well. Okay, now I've got some other things to tell you. First of all, a couple of housekeeping notes. Number one, part of Travel Detective Season 9, we're now screening our hidden gems of Beverly Hills. That's right. We're not going to show you what's on Rodeo Drive. We're going to show you what's under it. Nobody ever looks down in LA. Well, we did. So check that out. That's also running. Also, looking online right now, we're talking about the airports with the worst weather delays. You need to know that. And then this Saturday, our radio show is coming from the brand new, amazing Global Ambassador Hotel in Phoenix, Arizona. One of the all-time new great hotels in Arizona, run by legendary restaurateur and multiple James Beard Award nominee, Sam Fox, who's done a number of great restaurants in this hotel. It also happens to be a hotel. Imagine amazing restaurants where you can spend the night. I mean, that's what the Global Ambassador is, and it's absolutely worth it. Have you noticed that your airline seat still has the recline button, but it doesn't recline as far anymore? Gee, I wonder why. Well, guess why? Because the airlines have crammed more seats in coach, and it'd be physically impossible for you to recline your seat the original 4 inches because you destroy the person sitting behind you. So now, if you're lucky, it might recline 2 inches. That's it. I mean, some of the airlines have a recline button on their seat, which is purely ornamental, which brings up an important point that I want to share with you, that as voters, you need to bring to the attention of your own elected representatives. Back in 2018, Congress went to the FAA and said, look, planes are getting too crowded. You're adding more seats. Would you please come up with a standard that we can live with as an acceptable number of seats per aircraft type that would allow a safe evacuation of the plane? We're not talking about comfort. We're talking about safety. And they mandated that the FAA do it. The FAA slow walked it and never did it, while airlines kept on putting more and more seats into planes. Well, then a public interest group sued the FAA because they didn't comply with the FAA order. For reasons that still escape me, the court ruled in the favor of the FAA, and they still haven't done it, and they're still adding more seats to planes. This is nuts. Name one airline. We could test any one of them in real-world conditions that could safely evacuate a fully loaded plane with half the exits blocked and in the dark in less than 90 seconds. Now, I didn't make that requirement up. That's on the books. That's what every airline has to comply with. And every year, up until about 4 years ago, they all passed the test. You know why? They hired the staff from Cirque du Soleil. But wait a minute. What about now? It's even worse. The FAA has allowed the airlines to conduct that test on computer. Is this nuts? Yeah, that's a rhetorical question. Yes, this is nuts. So think about that the next time you're on a fully loaded plane with none of the exits blocked and all the lights on. And guess what? You still couldn't get out in less than 90 seconds. You know it, and I know it. And this brings me up to my favorite cartoon of the week. It's from the New Yorker. And let's run that, Anthony. I love this. Your sense of entitlement must fit in this space. What sense of entitlement? The airlines look at us now as self-loading human cargo. You know it, I know it, they know it. But in any case, that's what's going on. It's not about our sense of entitlement, and it's not about our sense of comfort in space. Let's just get down to the bottom line. It's our sense of safety. Where's that? And that's what needs to be discussed. In the meantime, the investigation continues at Boeing. As you know, the criminal investigation is continuing, and they've gone beyond just the assembly line of the Boeing 737 MAX. They've additionally added, of course, the 787 Dreamliner, based on the whistleblower that you may have heard about. And it is probably going to happen on the 777 as well. The same culture of safety that was at one, or a lack of it, is now being investigated at all the other assembly lines. Boeing right now has a backlog of plane deliveries, over 6,100 planes that are ordered that have not been delivered. Now you understand the crisis that U.S. carriers especially are having this summer because they don't have the planes to support the schedule that's been published. It's nuts. All right, let's go to some questions you guys have asked. Here we go. Jim says, why does Iceland Air act like a budget airline when they charge the same as any major airline? Here's a news bulletin for you, Jim. Iceland Air has always acted like a budget airline. When I was in college, we used to fly their old Constellations through Reykjavik to get to Europe for $99. Has that changed since then? Not really. Look at their route network. Reykjavik is still a great hub to connect, and now you have another player. It replaced the airline that went defunct. Wow, it's now called Play. New airline, same principle, hubbing through Reykjavik, discount fares. So now, are the discount fares as discount as they used to be? No. Why? Because Iceland's a hot destination now, regardless of volcanic eruptions. And a lot of people are actually going to Iceland and not just flying through it. That answers your question, I hope. Okay. All right. Aaron says, what's a cheap place to travel outside of the U.S.? My budget is under $6,000. Okay. You follow the power of the U.S. dollar. Where is the power of the U.S. dollar so strong against certain foreign currencies? South Africa is one. Argentina is another one. And of course, Turkey's another. Those three countries, the lira in Argentina, the peso in Argentina, and the rand in South Africa have been devalued for years. And in Turkey, it's been devalued many, many times. So much so that while they can adjust for airfares, they can adjust for hotels, they can't adjust for basic goods and services, ranging from a tube of toothpaste to a taxi ride to a beautiful dinner on the town. And that's where it becomes a buyer's market for you. And if you're looking for a cheap fare to get over there, don't try the nonstop flights. They're much more expensive. Look at airlines like Norse Air or other airlines that are going through other secondary hubs, and then do it that way. All right. In South America, you're a little bit more limited in inexpensive airlines. But then again, if you're going in about a month and a half, it's their winter. Remember, Southern Hemisphere, you'll be much better off. All right, here's one. Uh, Laura says, I've been skimming through about 40 pages of the newest edition of Lonely Planet's East Africa book that was published in November 2023, and I found so many typos and grammatical errors, as if half of it was written on a smartphone and no one thought to use spell check. Laura, that's music to my ears. I rebel against all of this. You know, when I was a correspondent for Newsweek, when I finished a story and I sent it in to the editors, the day I dreaded the most was about 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon on the West Coast. Why? Because that's when I had to get on the phone with the fact checkers. Not only did every I have to be dotted and every T be crossed, I had to provide 2 independent corroborating sources for every item I had in that story. And if I couldn't do it, the story got spiked. Today, where are the fact checkers? No, I'm not talking about Google. I'm not talking about Wikipedia. I'm talking about where are the fact checkers? And you're absolutely right. In fact, it's even worse than that. Right now, it's estimated that 10%, you mentioned a travel book on Lonely Planet, 10% of the books sold on Amazon as travel books, it's ChatGPT, it's AI. Pauline Fromer of the Fromer Guides told me a pretty disturbing story, that she had a book that was ripped off by AI and sold on Amazon. And in her original book, she talked about the pleasures of traveling in the fall in Italy. And when the book was ripped off and redone by AI, that chapter came out as the dangers of falling in Italy. Yikes. So be careful. Those authors may not exist. I totally agree with you, by the way. Erica says, have you flown on Norse Air before? As a matter of fact, I have. So how is it? You know what it is? Here's the deal. I remember when I was a correspondent for Newsweek, I was going over to Europe to interview Costa Garvis, the director, and I got sent a first-class ticket. And I looked at this ticket on TWA, and it was $14,000. And I couldn't in good conscience fly on that ticket. That wasn't a ticket, that was a Toyota, or in those days, 2 Toyotas. And that's the point here. Why are you getting on the plane? For the rich Corinthian leather? For the Broadway show tunes? For the music? For the food? Are you kidding me? You're going to go from point A to point B without dying. And you know what? It's just a seat. So Norse Air does a pretty good job. They've got late generation aircraft. They have a pretty good route network, and they fly to secondary airports, which in some cases is a benefit. So check them out. The other airline that I've come to love is Condor, based in Frankfurt. They've got brand new A330 Neos now flying to many cities in the U.S. and throughout Europe. They've got a great route network, if you don't mind transferring in Frankfurt, and check them out as well. Okay. Nancy says, my husband and I were thinking of going to Cancun or Tulum in August for my birthday, but I was reading that this is actually hurricane season, so I'm a little worried about the weather around this time. Well, if you're taking a look at the National Weather Service, projections for this year's hurricane season, they're not good. They're predicting at least 12 named hurricanes. That's not good. Would that stop me from going there in August? No. What I would do is find out which resorts, and by the way, there are resorts that'll do this, which resorts will offer you a weather protection guarantee, so that if your trip was either interrupted when you're down there or canceled because of the storm, they will fly you back at their expense next year. That's how you do it, right? And that insurance in many resort areas is available. Okay. Linda says, I'm invited to go with friends to Galveston for a summer-long weekend, Thursday to Sunday type of trip. Our family with 2 young kids, 2.5 and 6 months, and theirs with similar-aged kids. Is it a fun place for families? At the risk of angering everybody in Galveston, and I have to say it, I used to be based at one point as a correspondent for Newsweek in Houston in the summer where you fried. And one day I was so beaten up by the heat, I said, you know what? I'm going to get in my car and head south on I-45 until I reach water. I'm not stopping until I reach water. So I got in my car and I drove down south. Even the air conditioning in my car couldn't handle it. And all of a sudden I hit the water. What was the water? Galveston. And that beach was so ugly, so covered with oil, that I never got out of the car. I mean, I hope they fixed it. But if you're living in Galveston now, don't hate me, but that was my experience. And if my experience needs to be changed, let me know. I'll come back down to Galveston. All right. Saul said, I read that Amsterdam put a limit on overnight tourists. What did they really do? No, they didn't put a limit on overnight tourists. Here's what they did. And let's start with trying to put limits on numbers, right? Last year in Athens, in 100-degree weather, 30,000 tourists a day were trying to climb up to the Acropolis. They were like passing out from heat stroke. I mean, it was crazy. So what did the officials in Greece do to try to stop it? They've announced that this year they're going to limit to 20,000 people a day. Absurd. That doesn't solve the problem. In Venice, they're trying to stop day trippers. So they have a new rule that if you can't prove that you have a hotel reservation in Venice, you have to fork over a fee of about €5. Is that really going to stop anybody from taking a selfie on the Bridge of Sighs? I don't think so. But now, what did they do in Amsterdam? Well, first of all, they repositioned where the cruise ships can dock to try to alleviate congestion and crowding. That was probably a good move. But what did the city council do about 10 days ago? They passed a truly radical bill. They have now banned all new hotel construction in Amsterdam. And if you want to build a new hotel in Amsterdam, you can only do so if another hotel closes. They're trying to limit the number of room nights per year to about 20 million. That's their tipping point. That's still too high, but that's what they're doing. Oh, and Barcelona did something even crazier. They had so many attractions in Barcelona that were getting completely overcrowded by tourists. And how are they getting there? Well, they were going on Google Maps and finding the bus routes, right? So what did Barcelona do? They removed all those bus routes from Google Maps because they want to keep the tourists away from the locals and at least let the locals have a seat on the bus. So these are some of the steps being taken this summer to try to at least barely manage over tourism. All right. Alyssa says, I'm going to Paris in a week and was wondering about the travel strikes currently in Europe. Which parts of Europe are impacted? Well, it's a day-to-day deal. And what's being impacted right now, there's a strike in London. Look, if you're worried about strikes in Europe, then don't go to Europe ever because it's part of the culture now. Everybody strikes for about a day. They don't strike for 9 weeks. In fact, they announced the strikes in advance. Next Tuesday, we're striking. And we'll be back to work on Wednesday. I have no idea what this is supposed to accomplish, but anyway, that's what's going on. It would not stop me from going, but I would basically have a plan B, right? Who says you have to travel by plane if all of a sudden the baggage workers are on strike in Frankfurt or at Heathrow? Take the train. If the train workers are on strike, rent a car. There are ways to get around and you'll be fine, okay? All right, let's go back to say hello to a few more people here. We'll scroll back down. Hold on. Give me a second here. I love this. Colleen says, the opposite of coach air travel. Do you have any opinions about Four Seasons private jet? Well, Colleen, you have an entitlement issue now. All right, can you say garçon? By the way, not only does the Four Seasons have a private jet, so does Abercrombie and Kent. These are private jets, usually 757s. Sometimes they've got an A330 that literally will go for 50 or 60 days. It starts at about $250,000 per person. It's an all business class configured aircraft, and you go around the world. Not bad. All right, here's one I love. From Anna says, have the airlines started weighing passengers? I can give you a qualified yes. Finnair in Helsinki is doing that. So as you're going out to the airplane, they're actually to weigh yourself. I mean, look, we're all in denial, right? Why force it on us? With all puns intended, in the long run, that's just not going to fly. Okay. Harriet and Jim say, we read somewhere that American airports polled badly over international airports. Qatar was the number one airport in the world. It's true. Hamad International, we love that airport. They really did a great job. We did a 1-hour documentary on that airport. It's an amazing place to be. Right now, the Skytrax numbers are in, and Qatar was number one in the world. Now, you'll still have Singapore scoring high. Incheon in Korea, an amazing airport. Hong Kong, also great. But U.S. airports, come on. Not doing that great. All right. Jeff wants to know, do I have an opinion of JSX Air if you've flown it? Yes, I do have an opinion of JSX Air. They do a great job. If you're flying from, let's say, Los Angeles to Las Vegas, or even Los Angeles down to Los Cabos in Mexico, and many other routes, it's a plane that only holds maybe 20, 25 people. You're going from smaller airports where, yes, they comply with TSA rules, but you can literally park your car, walk about 30 feet to the terminal, go through whatever security checks you need to go through, and you're on the plane. It's great. I have not flown it yet, but friends of mine swear by it. Okay, Scott's saying hi from Canada. Portugal with a side trip to Madeira. Is it better to fly to Porto and end in Lisbon, or vice versa, or does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. And by the way, you picked two of my favorite cities. I live for the food in Portugal, not just in Lisbon, but in Porto too. One of my all-time favorite restaurants in the world is in Porto. It's 1756. I can even tell you the dish to order. It's called the salmon tataki, unlike anything you've ever had in any other restaurant. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that everybody who I've ever sent to that restaurant doesn't order one, they order two or three. They just can't get enough. In Lisbon, I've got three favorite restaurants. One is called Aqui Peixe, which means the fish is here. Another one is called Je ne sais quoi on Avenida Libertad. Great fine dining. And then my all-time fun favorite evening restaurant is Pop Sorda. It's on the second floor of the Time Out building in Lisbon. What I love about that restaurant, yes, it's got great food, but make room for dessert. And they only have one thing for dessert. So get ready. And if I tell you what it is, you're going to go, really? Because your experience with it is that it's served in a small little miniature champagne glass with a little baby spoon. That's at every other restaurant, not at Pop Sorda. What am I talking about? Chocolate mousse. So you order the chocolate mousse for dessert, and you're sitting there waiting for that stupid little glass and the baby little spoon, and all of a sudden you're tapped on the shoulder and you look up, and your server is there with a huge ladle and a huge bowl, and it just comes on the plate. You need a huge nap when that is over. Okay. By the way, if you're going to go to Portugal, you didn't mention the Algarve. A lot of the Algarve I'm not a fan of, but I am a fan of a small fishing village there called Lagos. Check them out as well. All right. Paul says, I'm heading to the Swiss Alps in June. I hope that there are no travel restrictions there. None that I'm aware of. Okay. Note to self, avoid thin air. Thank you, Rory. Here's one. That's how Midway Airport used to be, like JSX. Literally park and walk 30 feet to the check-in. You know the other airport I can do that with? It's in New York, out on Long Island. It's Islip Airport, MacArthur. One of the great alternate airports. I love that airport. I park my car. I literally walk 40 feet. There's maybe one person in line at security. I get on either Frontier or Southwest, and off I go. It really does work. Okay, let's scroll through up here a little bit. Hold on. I'm going here. Taya says, when you send your bags internationally via shipping carrier, how many days ahead do you mail them? Oh my goodness, don't do that. Those of you who know that I used to FedEx my bags everywhere, yes, domestically, never internationally. It's cost prohibitive. You're leaving yourself wide open to an overzealous customs agent to impound it. No. If you're flying overseas, check the bags and do it yourself. No FedEx, no courier. In the U.S., if you plan it right and you don't want to get it there by 10:30 the next morning, for about $45 more than what the airline wants to charge you for losing your bags, guess what? You save 2.5 hours of your life, and when you get to where you're going, your bags are waiting for you. The same thing happens when you come back. But when you come back, remember, your dirty laundry doesn't have to be there by 10:30 tomorrow morning. Send it 3 days in advance discount. Everything's fine. Okay, here we go. Double checking here. Okay. Oh, Jeanette wants to know, what do I know about Zip Air LAX to Tokyo? Relatively new airline. I'm checking on them because I have not heard any reports yet, but by next week I'll have something for you, okay? All right. Now, a couple of other things before we say goodbye today. Of course, remember, it's photo of the week. How could I forget? Let's do it. It's Gloria Golek. We have that photo up. There it is. You know where this is? Yep. Iceland. That's right. In South Iceland in February this year. She writes, the magnificent sunset is so beautiful because Iceland is so remote and majestic and offers great expanses of beauty. She's right. I agree. I love it. And of course, if you think your photo qualifies as photo of the week, you know what to do. Just send it to photo contest at petergreenberg.com. And if we agree with you, it goes right up there next to this photo as well. Once again, a couple of reminders. the radio show this week, coming to you from the Global Ambassador Hotel in Phoenix. Well worth listening to, well worth visiting. Of course, we're here at the Lion Museum of Aviation here in Santa Ana. Definitely well worth visiting. Remember the series right now, Masters of the Air? It's all about this plane, the B-17. Watch that miniseries. It's great. And of course, our radio show you know about, TD9, premiering very soon. In fact, let's show you a clip from the new Travel Detective season, premiering very soon.
On this season of The Travel Detective, we'll navigate a new course through uncharted waters in Antarctica, explore the rebirth happening right now in Detroit, test drive some military hardware in an unusual museum near Seattle, and discover the hidden gems of Lexington, Kentucky. Plus, we'll reveal the secrets of the one museum in America you can't visit, but we did. So join me, Peter Greenberg, each week on The Travel Detective.
By the way, another reminder that we've got the Hidden Gems of Beverly Hills, a lot of surprises that have nothing to do with high-end shopping. You'll see what I mean if you go on our website. You'll see the promo for that. And one more thing. Yes, we're in an aviation museum, but you know what else they have here? It's amazing. It's the Mercedes extended car that Hitler drove when he invaded Poland in 1939. It's an amazing car with an amazing story to tell. And here it is at an aviation museum. And speaking of Hitler's car, I'm reminded of one of my favorite stupid movies, Rat Race. Remember John Lovitz is in there, Cuba Gooding Jr., Whoopi Goldberg, Kathy Bates. Everybody. It's absolutely well worth it because, strangely enough, Hitler's car is in that movie too. I have no idea how it got in there, but it is. Check it out. Again, I want to thank everybody from the Lion Air Museum right here in Santa Ana, California, right next to runway 20 right at the John Wayne Airport. We're getting about to travel again, as you can imagine. We will see you next week from another distant remote location somewhere around the world. Have a great rest of your week. Kiss April goodbye because it's almost over, and we'll see you in May, otherwise known as next week. Thanks to Anthony helping us out here in Santa Ana, and thanks to you for watching. In the meantime, if you got more questions to ask me, you know what to do. Just email me, peter@petergreenberg.com. We'll solve it as soon as we get it. We'll see you next week, everybody.